Alright, let's talk about one of the most misunderstood and often disastrous parts of the dual use and defense pitch deck, the solution slide. And in case you're thinking, but my product's great and I love talking about it, this is the part of the deck I'm looking forward to? Well, maybe not. Because describing your solution is a minefield. Go too vague and your investors won't get it. Go too detailed and they'll get lost. And as the founder, you're way too close to your idea to be objective about any of this. So today we're fixing that. And while I generally think that it's best to have one slide per topic, the solution section can be 1, 2, or 3 slides. But for now, don't focus on the number of slides. Focus on communicating the right messages, and then take the number of pages you need to communicate those messages. And specifically, we need to answer these questions. What type of product are you making? Explain in plain English, no jargon. Whether it directly solves the problem from your solution slide, there should be a one-to-one connection between each problem and what your solution does, how it works, so explain the key functions and how they deliver a solution customers want, what makes it novel, so share a little of your secret sauce, and whether it's defensible, so lay out what's preventing someone from copying you. And that's a lot, so we're going to start by roughing out your message with a Mad Lib, then filling in some detail, and then editing to make sure you avoid common pitfalls that make investors pass. And if this video is fresh, meaning it was uploaded in the last 7 days, at the end I'll break down 3 real solution slides that some recent companies were nice enough to let me share, and give feedback on them so you can see what works and what needs some work. Alright, step 1. Let's outline your solution using a Mad Lib. Specifically this Mad Lib. So just fill in the blanks. Our, product type, helps, user, to achieve benefit through 1 to 3 key features. Here's an example. So if your problem is new Air Force aircraft maintainers struggle to repair aircraft at operational units because the training materials at the maintenance schools are outdated, then your solution Mad Lib might be, our VR training system gives trainee aircraft maintainers continuously updated educational materials thanks to our aircraft change tracker and automated curriculum engine. And this isn't a one and done exercise. Try dozens of different versions of this Mad Lib. Try lots of different phrasings till you have a crisp description of your solution. Then ask yourself, would your grandparents understand the product type and benefit? They should. Would they understand the features? So how your product works? They probably shouldn't. If they do, your innovation probably isn't bold enough. Next, are you assuming that the reader has industry knowledge? If you are, provide more explanation. And last, do the product benefits directly address the pain points and goals listed on the problem slide? And once you like your Mad Lib, put that information into a slide. For bonus points, use the same format that you use for your problem slide. That way it's extra clear that everything on your problem slide is addressed by the solution. For example, if this is your problem slide, your solution slide might look like this. The Mad Lib is on the left, and the solution slide structure is pretty similar to the problem slide structure, so it's easy to see how they connect. So this is a pretty good first solution slide, and it addresses these first 3 high-level questions, which gives our reader a framework to understand what we're building and why it helps people. But this slide is pretty high level, and investors might not believe that you could actually deliver on your vision and pass. So now it's time to show a little more detail. Alright, step 2, showing a bit more about what's going on under the hood. But don't do a dry list of product features. Those are going to be forgotten in a few minutes, so you need to make your solution memorable. In an ideal world, you'd send them a prototype or get them to watch a demo video. But if you can't do that, show them a killer slide. So here's how I recommend doing that. Start with a picture of your product and call out all the components that make it special. So for instance, if you use a standard battery, no need to call that out. It's not unique. But if you use some novel battery that you created that has critical properties or enables your product success, then do call it out. Bottom line, on this slide we want to highlight what makes your product work, so only highlight unique and critical parts. And my 2 cents, call out about 3 novel features. Any more and the reader might get lost. Any less and your product feels a little thin. And this applies to any kind of product. If you have a physical product, put a photo of that product on the slide. If it's software, share some screenshots. If there are novel algorithms or other process steps, then draw a flowchart or make some other visualizations of what's happening. So in my VR educational example, my feature slide might look like this. Here's some key screens, process flows, and technologies that highlight the technically risky but value-creating pieces. And in the text next to each feature, put enough information to convince the investor that you have a realistic shot at building the solution, and that this isn't just something that you saw in Star Trek. But you don't need to reveal your secret sauce or lay out a full R&D plan. Save that for your actual pitch. And fifth question, what's preventing other people from copying you? Because if you're successful, people are going to start copying you. And you should explain how you're going to slow those copycats down. And there are a lot of ways to do this. So list things like whether you have a patent, whether there's a network element or a data reservoir in your tech that'll be hard to replicate. Will you create economies of scale that'll allow you to drop your costs and pricing? Or is there something in your business model that'll be hard to replicate? Whatever it is, list it. If you don't have much protection, list what you do have on the features slide. But if you do have patents and lots of other protections, feel free to have a whole slide dedicated to this. Some people put their IP protection slide in the appendix, which is fine, but this is important, so consider putting it in the main body. And if you have nothing, don't sweat it. Most startups don't and rely on their speed to stay ahead of the competition. But at this point, you should have a solid draft for your solution slide. Now here's some thoughts on what the best and worst defense and dual-use solution slides do, or don't do. First mistake is when the solution is not aligned to the problem. And this can take a lot of forms. Sometimes it's just semantics. So the problem slide lists a bunch of problems and the solution slide lists a bunch of capabilities, but they don't really align, like this first one. Or it's not clear how the solution slide addresses that specific problem, like this second one. And this flavor of mistake is annoying because it assumes a lot of knowledge on the reader's part, but it's pretty common and not fatal. But other times the solution is incomplete or addresses a different problem, like these. And I think that this is a major problem because it demonstrates that the founder is unfocused and hasn't connected their solution to their customers' problems. Second, please use product images, diagrams, process flows, schematics, or any other visual device that will help me understand what your solution is and what it does. Don't just put a spec sheet. I don't know how to make sense of a table full of numbers. Third, if you include product images, please make it clear whether the image is of a real product or of a prototype or a physical mock-up or if it's AI generated. There is nothing worse than reading a deck, seeing an example of the product in use, assuming that the product's real, and then discovering that the image was actually AI generated. Fourth, I like when there are customer testimonials, quotes, case studies, impact studies, time trials, or anything else that validates the positive impact that your product is having for customers. Most of the impact and testimonial type stuff will appear in your traction slide, but by putting a little traction preview, it creates a lot of credibility. Fifth, use 18-point font and try to limit yourself to 50 words per page. You need to communicate quickly, so absolutely no paragraphs of text. Technical founders are big offenders here. And sixth, this is iterative. You should make dozens of these Mad Libs to test different ways of sharing your solution. Get the concepts on paper, and once you like what you're saying, you can work on how you're saying it. And again, try lots of different visuals and phrasings to help you communicate as clearly as you can. Alright, if this video has been up for less than a week, let's jump into some feedback on a couple solution slides I've gotten recently. And if it's been more than a week, consider subscribing so you get an alert as soon as these videos come out so that you can get these feedback sections also. Okay, here's a biotech startup, and the problem they laid out was that there aren't enough organs to meet the demand for transplants, and that tissues are complex, and they have 3 solution slides. So here's the first solution slide. And it's super detailed with cell thicknesses and specifics on the cilia and stuff. So a couple things I like. First, I love the images. And there are some interesting points about what makes it special, which is also great. But I'm not really sure how these benefits address the problem, which is that tissues are complex and that there aren't enough organs available. So maybe a solution slide could connect each of these pieces of the solution to a piece of the problem. So maybe adding text about what a 1-cell thick alveolar sac enables, or how vascularization enables organ creation. And here's the second solution slide. And while I love the images, I have the same comment. Help me understand how each of these features help solve the problem. Also, I'd say whether these images are from an actual product or were pulled from the internet. The title leads me to think that these are actual product images, but please add a footnote. Now our cyber company. And this is a combined problem and solution slide. The problem is that government and industry need to collaborate in their cyber response, and the solution bit introduces their solution. And these combined problem solution slides are fine, it's a nice transition, but I don't think they're necessary. Next solution slide is an image of the solution and the key features, which I love. This shows me that it's real and it directs me to the things that make it special. I also like that they speak to the benefits of each feature here in the blue subtext. So I really like this slide. My only note is that I would love a footnote that says that these are real screens and not mock-ups. So solid solution introduction. But then there are 5 slides that deep dive into different aspects of the products. These extra slides were in the appendix, so that's fine, but it does make for a long deck. But let's look at one. So a couple thoughts. First, I wish these slides' titles aligned to the features in the previous couple slides. They're similar, but not exact. The features page has 4 features, but I'm not sure which of these features this slide ties to. Second, I think these flowcharts could be simplified. I love icons and flowcharts, but as I read this flow, it isn't obvious how these steps together lead to critical infrastructure protection, or how to read these slides. Maybe people in this industry are used to diagrams like this, and I suspect they're great in a meeting where you could have the slide up on a wall and you can brief them, but as a standalone document, I'm struggling a bit. So I think my recommendation is to simplify and be a bit more methodical in your communication. And here we have our green hydrogen company. And the problem they're solving is that hydrogen costs too much, and producing it is expensive because a lot of the energy is lost as heat. So I like that this slide directly addresses those problems. I also like that they mention the patent pending and hours in use to establish some credibility. What I'd like to see is a bit more about how they do each of these things. So for example, how are they getting to zero waste heat? Or what are they doing differently? You don't need to share your secrets, but assertions by themselves are hard to assess. Also, on this image, it looks AI generated to me, which is fine. This is a seed deck, but it does make me wonder how they got to 1,000 hours of testing. Is this the unit they were testing on? If it was, why aren't they using an image of that actual unit? If it isn't the actual unit, well then why aren't they showing it? Okay, next slide. So this slide is an argument by analogy. So this company claims that they can create hydrogen with much less heat. And then they show incandescent light bulbs that create lots of heat on the left and an LED bulb on the right that doesn't. So I like this approach. But to make this really resonate, explain why this case from lighting validates what you're doing in hydrogen. So I like it, just connect the dots for me. And there are 10 core pitch deck slides, so to get some help with the next one, click on the thumbnail on the left. And we're on track to put out 45 pitch, grant proposal, and other funding tutorials in the next 12 months, so subscribe to catch them all.